go through all this. So because of the Berry project, the injection operations associated with the Berry project, I think I've got a little insight into talking a little bit about geological storage. So as an industry representative, we would definitely prefer to sell our CO2 for EOR. And I think for any new generation plant that comes down the pipe, like Kemper County is doing right now, you've got to have that revenue stream to justify it. I think it would still be difficult to retrofit an existing plant and do geological sequestration in saline reservoirs as opposed to selling the CO2, but I think it's definitely both ways you're gonna need to get that revenue stream. I think that the industry is fairly mature on storage assessment. I don't think that's going to be an obstacle. There's a lot of methodologies and different approaches to doing that. We're looking at doing injection in multiple horizons, stack storage, doing incline drilling and doing storage. So I think that as an industry, we're very prepared to go out and assess geology in different areas to do geological storage. Injection operations of fluid and gas are very mature in the oil and gas industry. We lack a little bit from a lack of experience with commercial scale volumes, and I think this was mentioned in the last presentation, and also understanding what happens to the CO2 over a long time period. So a lot of these demonstration or pilot projects we're doing, we're only able to look at the CO2 for a few years, 2 or 3 years before the Department of Energy money runs out or the funding runs out for these projects. And what happens to that CO2 after that? It's up to the modelers, and it's up to the geological modelers. But I think that we could probably work through that. The well permitting, EPA has come out with the Class 6 well permitting. There's several applications in for this right now. I don't believe that a Class 6 permit has been issued yet. But industry lacks, and both industry and the regulators, and this is nothing against the regulators, but whenever you have a new type of permitting that comes out, everybody's trying to figure out exactly what is meant. You can read it and it says something, but what exactly does that translate for you to actually put in that permit? And if you enter into this permit and you build this billion-dollar asset, it's sort of like the tail wagging the dog here. You've got the power plant, you've got the capture unit, and you've got this hole which you're dependent on accepting the CO2. And this permit is the condition on what you're going to be looking at, and if you're in violation of that permit, you have to stop injecting. So, understanding a little bit more about Class 6 permitting, I think, is very important for the industry. CO2 monitoring, it benefits a lot from the oil and gas industry. There's a lot of things we're doing out there. We're doing seismic, we're doing tracers that we're injecting with the CO2, we're doing pressure monitoring, temperature monitoring, downhole fluid sampling, soil flux at the surface, well integrity monitoring. So there's a lot of things out there, but again, our research programs have suffered from the fact that the amount of CO2 we're putting in the ground, even with the Plant Berry project with 100,000 tons a year, it's a needle in a haystack trying to identify this in these big saline formations that we have in the southeast, and we actually have trouble imaging it because it's a small amount of CO2. We really need that million-ton injection and deploy these monitoring technologies on 1 million tons. So the Kemper project, the importance of that obviously is that there's this relationship that's developed in understanding enhanced oil recovery using anthropogenic CO2. With respect to load growth in the future, we're building the Kemper project right now, so I don't think we'll be looking at another clean coal project for a little while, since we're building one right now. It will be up and running later this year in October or November. We're building new nuclear in Georgia, and we're retiring old coal with natural gas combined cycle. So we're doing a lot with our fleet right now. We're in a major construction phase, so I don't expect that we'd be doing a lot in the future. In the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, but if we do, it will be revolving around CO2 EOR. I think that it's a niche market, with low gas prices. I mentioned this earlier. You're going to have to be close to a fuel source. You're going to have to have EOR markets available to take the CO2 and get a revenue, be close to pipelines. But with all this, there still needs to be some state and federal incentives for clean coal to move forward in a regulatory environment. A lot of the new term projects that are out there are all receiving federal and state incentives. For example, our Kemper County, the TCEP project and the HECA project. And none of them are really currently operational. The Kemper project is the main one, other than the Boundary Dam project, that is actually moving forward right now and is actually groundbreaking. So this word commercially feasible or commercial, something being commercial, we struggle with this internally. Different people kind of view that as meaning something different, but EPA mentions the Kemper County plan a lot in their new source performance standards, and they refer to CCS as being, adequately demonstrated, and yet we have not even really finished building this plant, and we're not operating it. So that's a little bit troubling there. We view Kemper as being a first-of-a-kind commercial demonstration or a first-of-a-kind commercial plant. I mean, that doesn't make something commercial just because you are going out and building it. I think that there has to be an element of understanding, you have to have vendor guarantees, which we have on that plant, but you have to have a guarantee of operational reliability, long-term operational reliability. So that begs the question is how long would you operate a plant like Kemper before you would declare it commercially viable and you'd want to go out and build more of these plants widespread. So the other thing we kind of talked about in this group to discuss was the need for CO2 EOR. I've kind of already touched on that, but I really think that holistically you're going to have CO2 EOR. It takes a lot off the operator. If you're doing saline reservoir, then you do have these issues with the long-term liability, the Class 6 well permitting. If you go the EOR route, you might, like we're doing with Kemper, have an offtake agreement at the plant gate. And so we have enough to deal with the carbon capture and operating the power plant and not having to work, deal with downstream operations. The oil companies are the ones that are very responsible at doing that and do a great job of that. Let them kind of handle that side of it. And that also obviously plays into the economic evaluation. Let's see. That's about it. Yeah, so that's all.